Hi, Glenn. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
All well. Thank you so much for joining the Economic Times Global Business Summit, which for the first time we're doing virtually. And that means no airline travel, no hotel bookings, and no dining out. All of this severely and very closely hits all of your businesses, right, Glenn? I mean, whether it's Kayak, Agoda, OpenTable, Booking.com. I want to start by asking you. How have you sort of navigated through this unprecedented situation for you and your business while you were also battling at on the personal front when you tested positive for COVID early on in the pandemic? Um,
Well, thank you for asking. It's a very difficult time for everybody in the entire world. Nobody has been able to escape the problems of this pandemic. And I unfortunately, I too and my family, we all came down with the virus. But so fortunately, we recovered very, very quickly. And, I know so many people personally who have had such terrible times with this illness. And unfortunately, I know some people who were not successful and lost their fight with this virus. And it's just so tragic for everybody around the world. And you're right, at the same time of dealing with the fear of your own personal health and your family's health and dealing with the lives and the health of 27,000 employees of the Booking Holdings organization, it's very difficult. But you have to react. You have to take steps that are necessary to try and make sure that you're doing everything possible to preserve what we had created over 20 years, which is the greatest travel company in the world.
Glenn, also talk us through, how job losses and overall employee sentiments have been hit very badly in the travel and hospitality sector. How are you kind of keeping your folks sort of motivated? What is bringing them back to work at a time like this?
So we have taken every single step we can to try and preserve as much employment as possible. But of course, the travel industry has been hurt more than any industry around the world, I think. And that has required, in the end, we had to take that last resort. And we did have to restructure the organization. Unfortunately, and we've talked publicly about this, approximately about 25% of our employees, unfortunately, will have to go on to other things. And it's so sad. But the thing that has really touched me so much so is the morale of the people, both people who are leaving and people who are staying, in the sense that everybody recognizes this is what we have to do to preserve and have a company going forward. It's incredibly sad, but I know there's a future for all of us. This pandemic will end at some point. Economies will come back, jobs will be there, and we'll get through this.
You recently spoke to Skift in an interview, and I'm quoting you. You said the COVID-19 virus had no redeeming value, but that your company will coincidentally be well placed for the recovery thanks to new consumer awareness of alternative lodging. Can you tell us a little about the changes in consumer behavior that you expect due to the pandemic? And are you seeing some of that already sort of unfold?
Yeah, no, we are seeing changes happen already, and it's behaviors changing. And you mentioned businesses are changing, how they're going to do business travel or not do business travel, which impacts the whole industry terribly. First thing that we've noticed is, and it's obvious, right away, people don't want to go anywhere. You want to just hunker down in where you live and be safe.
Yeah.
But then when restrictions start lifting and people say, okay, I can go somewhere, and you feel totally trapped in your home, you want to go somewhere, what do? You go to someplace close by. So very close, not far. And then you start saying, well, is it safe to go and stay in a hotel? Or is it safe to stay in a small single place dwelling like a home? And so many people decided, I don't want to go to a place with a big lobby and a lot of people. I'm going to go and get what we call an alternative accommodation, which is a home, maybe something on the beach or in the mountains. And a tremendous number of people chose that. In fact, in our second quarter, we had over 40% of our new bookings for people who wanted that alternative accommodations, which is approximately maybe twice what it was a year earlier, which is a big change. Now, that was an acceleration of a trend that had been going on for a long time. People becoming more interested in not staying in hotels and staying someplace that is a private home or something like that. What's going to happen, though, that accelerated that trend much more so. So next year and the year after, when people are thinking about traveling, they're going to think not only hotels, but they're going to think, I had a good time in that private accommodation, that alternative accommodation. So that will be part of their consideration set. What that means is supply has increased tremendously. All the alternative accommodations now, if you own a hotel or you manage a hotel, you're dealing with the problem of lower demand, but you're also dealing now with the competition from the alternative accommodations. Now, we're in a good position, though, because we have both. We have almost 7 million listings that are alternative accommodations. Totally, though, we have almost 30 million total listings. We got both. We got the hotels, we got the private accommodations, alternative accommodations. So what that means is that customers, when thinking where to go, it's very easy to come to our site. They can look at both types of places to stay, compare, contrast, see prices, see reviews, so they see which one's the right one for them. We're in a better position because of this. If you're a hotelier, you're worse off because now there's all this alternative accommodation. That's a big issue.
Tell me, which markets are you seeing these kind of recovery patterns, and where does sort of India stack up in all of this?
Well, yeah, India, look, it's really a correlation between how bad are the infection rates, how bad are the government restrictions in terms of travel, and that totally correlates with how much travel we're going to get. I can almost tell you, without looking at news items, I can tell you how many restrictions there are in a country and how's the virus, because I'll look and see how our booking's doing. And India, unfortunately, has been having a hard time. We all know the news. We see what's going on. And we know that some things are opening up in some of the states in India, and we know there's hope and all that. But compared to some other places, it's still bad. Look, the U.S. where I live, it's bad. Even Western Europe now, if you're looking at the recent news, unfortunately, while things were very good in the summer in terms of low infection, it's going back up, and that will correlate with decreased increases in travel. It's unfortunate, but we need a vaccine. We need a therapeutic. Then we'll all be able to get back to normal.
Yeah. I mean, you touched upon India and how the lockdown here was very harsh. In fact, it was one of the harshest. I wouldn't know of any other country which had this kind of a severe lockdown. Tell me, you looking at a pile of data across all your brands which run through travel, hotels, restaurants. What are you seeing, in terms of revival? I know it's a very, very, you can't really predict at a time like this, but is there any timeline that you see, for some sort of normalcy to sort of come back for the kind of business that you're in?
Well, so we do talk a lot about how the recovery to go back to the 2019 levels of travel and hospitality, we're not going to get there for years. It's not a recovery that's going to come in a couple of quarters. This is going to take years to get back to that. Now, I read what our people on my staff, what they're putting out in terms of modeling out what the future is. And I look at my competitors and what they say in public, what they're predicting, and pretty much everybody's saying the same thing, which is going to take a long time. Yeah. Nobody has an exact one because it's all dependent. It's all dependent on when we get vaccines, when we get the distribution of the vaccine, how quickly is it put around, and that's going to determine everything. Now, on top of that, though, governments can play a part. Governments can help accelerate the recovery. When things are safer, when there are vaccines and people are feeling safer, all the governments around the world can, if they want to, and they should, put money to work to help bring back the travel and tourism, hospitality business. And some governments are doing it already. For example, Japan is relatively, safe, low infection rates in Japan. And the Japanese government has put together a program that is helping to bring back travel and tourism. We're participating in this with them. The government in Thailand has very low infection rate. It's almost nothing in Thailand. The Thai government's doing something, and we're working with them. Other parts of the world, governments are already doing it, but I urge every government around the world to get ready to put specific programs in place so that when it's safe to travel, that money can be put to work and we can revive the travel industry faster. That would be helpful and provide a tremendous number of jobs.
You've been very supportive of whatever the governments across the world have been doing in terms of lockdown or the restrictions that have happened, and you're in New York. There were a lot of restrictions there. What more can we expect in terms of the government's involvement in bringing back this sector, whether it is SOPs or policy changes? I mean, what do you expect, and what is the overall industry expectation?
Well, I think what we're going to expect is a lot of different industries pleading with governments for help. I mean, that's just natural right now. But I would say that the travel industry, the tourism industry, the number of jobs, 1/3 of 1 billion jobs around the world are associated with travel and tourism in 2019. Of course, it's much lower now. And some of the predictions are, unfortunately, the industry may lose anywhere between 100 million to 200 million jobs around the world, which is it's unbelievable. So we need that to come back. Now, governments do that. And I know in India, I know that the tourism industry and the people in the government have been working together. I know that there is that draft work being done in terms of how can India develop its travel and tourism business better for the future. And we absolutely think that is the right thing to do in terms of putting together different types of programs and in governments working with industry to help create an incredibly vibrant and very growing industry that I know India, I've been to India many times. It is such a perfect place for people to go travel to. It really is. It's an opportunity for economic growth, because I know that people, when they think, where should they go? A lot of times they're not yet thinking India, but they should, because it's a great place. One of my disappointments reading some of that draft of the tourism proposals is that it doesn't seem to be talking about people like us, the online travel agencies, where I think we can add a great deal of help in bringing travel and tourism to India. So I really would like to continue to work closely with the Indian government to help make the Indian government travel industry as incredibly big as it should be, given the things that are there.
Is there any ongoing conversation you're having with the Indian government? Anything that you can talk about?
Our people, our industry people who are based in India, they're always having conversations. Our public affairs people are always reaching out. We're always available for conversations. We're always trying to put our point of view across so that together, industry and government can work together to create what's great for the entire community.
Yeah. Tell me a little about, the online travel business. If you look at, there's a lot of discussion whether at this point, are you seeing more hotels and, home rental businesses sort of come onto platforms like yours, or they want to directly, tap the consumer? I mean, we've seen a lot of that happen across brands as well. They've used this opportunity to directly communicate with their consumers. They don't want to part way and pay any sort of commissions to aggregators. What have you seen in the last 6 months?
Well, this is always a function of how much somebody needs or wants more customers.
Yeah.
So when the travel industry was booming in 2019, many people in the industry may have felt, well, I'm almost full in my hotel. I don't necessarily need another distributor to help me fill it up. It's almost filled, right? So there's less need for someone like us. But now, in a situation where there's so little business, it flips the exact opposite. So all the suppliers of any kind of travel supplier, whether it be an airline, a hotel, a car rental, whatever it is, they need and want as many customers they can get. And they'll come to us because we have the largest demand platform in the world. So, of course, they want to deal with us, and we want to work with them together. We want to try and bring back that business and help them. And we do it in a very efficient way. It's a lot cheaper for a hotel in India to let us help bring them those customers from around the world. And we do all the content. We do all the marketing ourselves, Google, everywhere, to bring in that demand. We do all the translations. We deal with all the customer service, and we do that customer service in over 40 different languages. We're doing all that for the hotel, and we're not even charging them anything unless we give them a paying customer. That's the only time we ask to get paid, is if they get paid. It's a great reason why I think we've been able to build the business that we have, is because we're really working together. It's a real symbiotic relationship.
Is there growth that you foresee in India on the supply side going forward?
I think there'll be tremendous growth in all areas of travel. There's no part of travel that won't grow in India in the long run. How fast it grows, of course, will be dependent on a lot of issues, one of which is government, how they want to help. Look, the draft national tourism, policy 2.0, great start, good to start be thinking about that. But I think it's, even more. And I think the people who are worked on that, and the people in government, they recognize that government can help build up an industry that under indexes. When I say that, when you look at some of the other countries around the world and you see how much of their GDP is coming from tourism and travel, and then you look how much for India, and you say, wait, we should have more. And you should have more, because there's so many things that people should come and visit.
Glenn, I also want to talk to you about business travel. While everyone's talking about a pent-up demand for leisure travel and holidays, which is expected to sort of bounce back, even if it's in a staggered way across markets. Tell me, how will business travel fundamentally change, after the pandemic? We've all gotten used to work from home, remote working, and companies and businesses are looking to save on costs. That is a huge, big part of your business. How do you see that changing?
What you pointed out is so true in terms of people are looking at the costs of travel, and you're in a business that right now is having issues. Of course, you want to conserve your costs all you can. That's one. Two, you do see how video communication has made things so much more efficient. Look at this. We're doing this right now. We're doing this on two different sides of the world, and it's like you're just next door and we're having a business conversation. So it's really easier to do it. So, of course, there's going to be a lot less travel for business in the future than there would have been pre-COVID. And the reason being, everybody's learned that, hey, we can do this and it works. So why spend all that money on travel? Yeah. Now, that's going to really impact the whole travel industry, because a lot of the revenue is coming from the high-paying business traveler. So the five-star hotels, the first-class airline tickets, those different areas in the industry were helping provide a tremendous amount of the revenue and therefore the profits for a lot of the players. Now, with that being greatly reduced, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is these hoteliers who used to have to depend on business, now they need more leisure players. And there's a lot more empty supply now. All those seats on the planes that aren't being filled by business people, all those rooms in the hotels not being filled by business people. We, as the primary leisure player, we are much more leisure than business. We have only a small amount of business, tremendous amount of leisure. We're in a perfect position to help out those suppliers, bring that leisure demand, help them do well, even though the industry has changed.
That brings me to the question of, having a cash reserve and having a long runway for a lot of businesses. Some of the ones that you spoke about, which are very reliant on business travel, will be feeling the pain the most. Do you expect a lot of consolidation happening over the next 6 to 8 months? What is your medium-term sort of outlook on the overall sector?
So if you look right now in the United States as an example, and I mentioned the U.S. only because there's an event happening right now. Yeah. Right now, the U.S. airline industry is basically almost running out of money. And they've asked the U.S. government to help provide another stimulus package to provide them with money to take them through to the future. Because they said, look, if you don't do that, and you don't do it right now, literally in the next couple of days, we're going to have to lay off just tens and tens and tens of thousands of airline employees. Because no airline basically can run right now if you have only 25% or 30% of the seats being paid. It just doesn't work. So we need to either the government's going to have to help support the airline industry for a while, or many of these airlines are going to have to just close down a lot of their operations. Now, the question, though, consolidation or not, well, it's hard to say, but I suspect what's going to happen is I think a lot of the governments around the world, because having a vibrant airline industry is so important, that many governments around the world will continue to help support the airlines, knowing how critical it is for the entire industry. We talk about how important a vaccine is. How are we going to get those vaccines around the world quickly and efficiently if there aren't airlines to help move them around? I mean, there's so many parts. Without an airline industry, you don't have a modern economy.
The vaccine is your new passport, right, Glenn? I mean, that's what everyone's talking about. But a couple of questions before we wrap up. I mean, what has been your biggest learning, in the last 6 months, having been in an industry which has been obviously hit the harshest?
It's one of those lessons that you learn over and over again, is when things get really, really, really bad, it's reminding yourself that the most critical things, though, are your own health, your family's health, your friends' health. And if everybody's okay, then all your other issues, all your other parts of your crisis are relatively small in comparison. And that helps make you think a little calmer about things. Okay, the world isn't ending because I am not terribly ill right now. My family's not terribly ill. My friends aren't terribly ill. So right away, we're in good shape. The fact that business is having trouble and all that, okay, we can fix that. We know this pandemic's going to end. All pandemics do end. History of the world, there are pandemics. History of the world, there's pandemics end. I don't know how long this one's going to go for. I don't know whether we're going to have an announcement in the next month or two that says there's an effective vaccine, and then it'll take time to roll out. But maybe in a year or 2 years or whatever, we'll all be vaccinated and things will be good, or maybe it'll take longer. I don't know. I do know, though, 5 years from now, when I look back to today, 5 years from now, I'm going to look back and say, that was a terrible, terrible thing. And I'm so glad it's gone, but it's gone. And we'll be living our lives not that different than before there was a pandemic.
Before I let you go, Glenn, I want to ask you, what do you think of Airbnb planning to go public at a time like this? What do you make of the move?
Well, look, first of all, if, and I expect Airbnb will go public in the not so distant future, I say congratulations to Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO.
He was at the GBS just a while back.
Oh, great. Well, I wish I had heard what he said. Look, I think it's great for them. They want to go public, go public. Be a public CEO. I am certain that he will experience the great pleasures and issues you do that all public CEOs do. In terms of the business, though, it's not going to change. No one's going to say, oh, now I'm going to use Airbnb because it's public. Or somebody's going to say, oh, I'm not going to use Airbnb. Nobody cares. No consumer cares. It's just purely a financial transaction. It will help some people who have been holding that stock for a very long time and not been able to sell. They'll be able to sell it and get some profits. Great for them. It may bring more capital into Airbnb, but it's not like they're hurting for capital right now. They raised a lot of money during the crisis and they're well positioned. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference at all. I think we'll still be very, very strong competitors together. We'll still hopefully be able to convince consumers why it's better to come to Booking.com. And I go through all the reasons about we have both hotels and alternative accommodations, and it's instant booking, and you don't get hit with a traveler's fee at the end. And I go through all those things and tell the consumers why they should come to us. I don't think the Airbnb IPO is going to make a darn bit of difference about that.
Last thoughts, Glenn, in terms of, I know everyone's wanting an answer to when we'll sort of get back to traveling normally. And, is there any prediction at all that you can make?
I can definitely say it will continue to be a roller coaster. Sometimes it's going to be really good and great, and sometimes people are going to get all scared and not travel much, and it's all going to depend on the levels of infection. I mentioned it earlier. Western Europe in the summer, there was a lot of traveling going around. It was domestic primarily, and people were driving instead of flying a lot of it, but people were traveling. Well, we mentioned with those, with the virus increasing, that shuts that down. You see in Madrid, for example, right now has put in a semi-type lockdown. You look in Great Britain, where they just came out with an announcement where they're doing some restrictions that they're putting in place. It's going to be one of those things where sometimes it's great. People are feeling, okay, I can go travel. And then there's going to be, oops, not going to travel anywhere. It's going to be like that until we get a vaccine.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Glenn. Thanks so much for taking our time. It was an absolutely, insightful chat. And hopefully the next time around, you'll be flying down to India, taking that plane and staying in a hotel, and we'll be meeting one-on-one.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And I am looking forward to it. It will be nice to be able to go back to India and all the other great places around the world. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think everybody in the world is really looking forward to that too.
We all are. Yeah, stay safe, Glenn. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.